Good morning, everyone. This is the September 3rd meeting of the Stockbridge Bowl Stewardship Committee. And we're calling the meeting to order at 8 o'clock. We have a quorum. I would like to begin by having someone give us a motion to accept and approve the minutes of the August 20th meeting.
So moved.
Second,
Second.
all in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Okay, we're going to be starting our meeting. I think, Charlie, you're on Zoom, is that right? Okay, don't see Charlie. All right, I was hoping he would give us a rundown on the Board of Health meeting, which took place last evening.
He's not here yet, so.
He's not here.
Yeah.
So we'll just move on. We'll go. And Gary is in here. Gary, are you online? Regarding the zebra mussel station updates.
No, he
Okay.
wasn't there either.
All right. I guess it's you then, Roxanne. The harvesting updates.
Okay, so we had a discussion last night about resumption of harvesting. And basically, we do have a second harvester that's ready to go. At this point, we're just waiting to see how our GPS unit is faring. It's been in rice. It was coming out last night. So we're going to see if that's functional. If not, because that's a requirement, we have to make sure we have a working GPS on board. And the other thing with a larger harvester is we do need to use a service to transport it to and from the lake. So that's still pending. And so there's a discussion of, just starting up the harvesting as soon as possible, and certainly prior to the Josh Billings. Our other option is that Mike Canales said he would be talking to Misty Ann Merrill of NHESP, explaining our situation and explaining, at least for the Josh, that, we have this kind of an obligation because we have a major event going on, and we might have to run the harvester without a GPS. But we're hoping that it's all going to come back and be okay once it's all dried out. So that's about it. Good morning, Charlie. That's it.
Good. Hi, Charlie. You and I were speaking about the Tri-Town meeting, and if we skipped this item on the agenda, so perhaps you can pick it up regarding the Board of Health meeting. Have you had anything to report?
You're talking, okay, so last week, the Board of Health met, the Stockbridge Board, and then last night, we had a joint meeting of the three boards from Lee and Lennox, that's the Tri-Town Health Department. And it was joined by Representative Pignatelli. And we discussed the fact that the Tri-Town is seeing increasing numbers of cases. There were 8 cases, I think, in Lennox in July and 36 in August. And that was the biggest. Lee has a bump up too in their cases. Stockbridge is relatively low numbers still, I think 9 cases. But the trend is many hundreds of percentage of increase in cases. And if that's what we saw early on in the epidemic. So the basic idea is this is occurring everywhere. And the data, there are different levels of data about this. The first level of data is basic science. And the basic science shows that the neutralizing antibody levels that you get after vaccines protect you initially quite well, but then they drop off. The Johnson & Johnson, the single shot neutralizing antibody levels probably drop off the fastest, but Moderna and Pfizer drop off also. Now, this is typical for vaccination, but in this case, the drop-off rate is pretty fast. So boosters are going to be recommended, I think, in general, pretty soon. There's a lot of reasons why the boosters aren't being recommended for everybody at the present time. I do not believe it at all that the vaccines are in short supply. It's really a question of trying to get people to be vaccinated in the first place. There are a lot of people, probably just a little less than half of the population in a lot of areas that have not been vaccinated at all. This allows the virus to propagate and allows strains like the Delta to emerge from the populations with much more vigor than we would have, let's say, if we had like an 85 or 90% vaccination rate in the first place. We wouldn't have this, the virus wouldn't have the ability to propagate itself. So we're trying to deal with this now, the three boards. Obviously, nobody wants to go back to where we were with the start of this disease, but it certainly looks like we're getting into a situation that's very reminiscent of the pre-vaccination disease situation. So the Tri-Town Health Department has issued, we are discussing mandates. The real issue with a mandate for Tri-Town is that right now the Tri-Town staff is very busy doing contact tracing and actually following up on these new cases. And and also we have a vaccination program coming down that will be for both flu. Obviously, we need to still vaccinate against the flu, but also for COVID. And these, the clinics will be set up in Stockbridge. I think the first one will be September the 21st. I think that will be at Heaton Court. I'm not 100% sure on it. And then there'll be a second one after that. These will be vaccinations. I'm not sure whether it will be Moderna or Pfizer or options, but it will be for people that have never been vaccinated, people that have immune deficient, people that have been vaccinated once, let's say, with one of the particular things and need a second shot, and also people that have immune problems. And hopefully, eventually, if the boosters are okay, approved by the CDC for everybody, we'll have booster clinics too. But this is in place too. And what Jim Willis was concerned about with Tri-Town is that if the Tri-Town by itself mandates that everyone wear masks indoors, mandates that, makes it a rule, that he's worried that they're going to be inundated with people saying that this is not being enforced at this place or not being enforced at that place, and that the Tri-Town staffing will not allow for that kind of enforcement, and it will look like it won't be able to enforce what we're trying to tell them to do, or take away from the contact tracing, which is a valuable way to try to keep the virus from propagating. We are seeing with the Delta variant a lot of interfamilial propagation. In other words, the majority of the cases so far are within families, rather than, let's say, being in the workplace, which is good. Oh, that's good. So the suggestion was from the different boards, this is actually Smitty Pignatelli's suggestion, is to go to our select boards, whoever they might be. I think we have somebody from that select board on our commission here, and actually get the select boards to come in and weigh in with the boards of health in unison, and maybe even get the chambers of commerce together too, and get the community to get revved up again, because this is, all of us wanted this to go away. It's an extremely fatiguing thing. And, we need to get the enthusiasm back up again to do what we need to do. And I really believe that we're going to have booster vaccines available pretty soon, that the CDC will go for that, and we'll all be off the hook to some extent. At least we'll be in a much better situation. But for the time being, in order to minimize the spread among people in our community, we need to get a very high level of appreciation among the different people in the community that this is happening again. So that was basically the essence of the meeting last night, is to, first of all, we're putting out a mandate. We're getting the wording together for that. Not a mandate, but it's a directive. It's not a specific order, but we will order and mandate that people wear masks if this doesn't work. If we find that the cases are still going up, we will mandate it, and we'll do that. At this stage, we're hoping that we can bring on the other members of the community just to simply do it in a way that doesn't absolutely insist. And it's certainly the case that in our community, and I think in the neighboring communities too, in Tri-Town and throughout the Berkshires, we really have had really good public support for this. I mean, we really have had, and people did a really good job with this. I got to say that we wouldn't have had the success that we had in our communities if we didn't have that public support. And all I would say now is I can imagine that everybody is disappointed in some ways that it hasn't worked to the extent that we would have liked it to, that this thing didn't go away. But I really do believe that if we go at it again, this is halftime. We're going back in where maybe we be, we need to come back after halftime. I feel like I'm the coach giving a little talk there. and the basic idea is we got to get out there and do a good job again. We got a whole halftime ahead of us. We can't rest on our laurels for having done a good job in the first half. So that's the message from last night's meeting.
Thanks, Charlie. Are there any questions for Charlie? Mike?
Well, for Jim also. Jim, welcome.
Hi, Jim.
Good morning. Sorry, I was a little bit late. Internet problems.
Well, it's good to see you. What about those that took Johnson? We're going off, I guess, off the lake and onto COVID, but that's probably even more important what you're talking about. What about those that took Johnson & Johnson? Do you have any information on that group of people getting a booster or?
Well, right now, boosters are allowed for those that have immunocompromised challenges, and we're hoping as time moves along, there'll be boosters for everybody. But getting back to Dr. Kenny's point, for example, from July to August in Lee, 45% of our positive cases were people that were fully vaccinated, 62% in Lenox and 45% in Stockbridge. So the Delta variants here, we don't know for sure if it's exactly Delta because they don't test for every specific variant, but it's here and the cases are going up. And I foresee, without putting the fear of God in people, I think September is going to be a really rough month numbers wise. The Pittsfield does the biobot testing at the wastewater, and they're already seeing significant signs that we're in for an interesting September. And if it's going to be high in Pittsfield, it's going to be high in Berkshire County. And Dr. Kenny is right. We were hoping to not do a mandate and more of a strong-handed directive, because if we don't pull together as a community, the boards do have the authority to look at mandates with enforcement. We don't want to do that because we've done really well together. But I'll tell you, we're exhausted here at the department. We have not stopped since March of 2020. We never shut down, and I'm working 7 days a week, and the bandwidth is very limited on what we can do. And we got to really send a strong message that we're going into halftime, and I don't want to be the quarterback. I want to be the punter and punt it to another community, I guess. But we know it's not gone, and I'm not surprised that we're here. I never thought we were out of the woods, and I just think we need to pull together. And masking is a very easy lift, in my opinion. It's not controversial. Of course, we're going to encourage vaccinations and all the other things, but we're seeing some other communities surrounding Tri-Town where they've had recent outdoor events. It's actually in the Eagle, and there's some fallout with that. Schools are being closed. We're getting rapid testing in some of those towns. A couple of restaurants have closed, all because of an outdoor event. And so we want to be diligent. We want to be swift, and we want to just take this step by step. But we will be finalizing a directive that will it will go live on September 7th. And Dr. Kenny and I are working over the weekend to kind of work out those finer details. So I don't have any bowl updates other than our continuation to talk about, Lake Drive and the septic challenges that we have. But that's all I really have for now. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Jim. And as to Mike's concern, I think we're all very concerned about this COVID uprising. And thank you both for your updates. But we're going to try to steer this back to our function, which is the discussion of the lake. And Jim, as you have mentioned, we have been discussing the Lake Drive meetings that we had. Now, we had the Sewer Water Commission met on August the 10th. And I know, Mike, you were there. And we had a presentation from the Lake Drive Association, and they presented us with the fact that there are 22 units that are living on Lake Drive. Some of them are, 6 of them are on a septic that seems to be functioning. However, there have been 22 there have been 12 failed systems in the past, and I think Jim could speak to that a little better. And so there's this concern with the existing people that they would rather go on sewer if sewer water was willing to extend the sewer system. However, as we discussed at that meeting, there are some concerns regarding the finances, and I think the upshot of the discussion was, yes, we know you want it. However, there's a lot of people waiting. We have a 5-year plan, and the Lake Drive extension is not on that 5-year plan. And we might have to go back to a town meeting to discuss where we're going to get the money from. Are there any updates on that, Roxanne?
No.
No. Jim, you were going to discuss any findings with the septics. Are there any that are dangerously in need of repair? Are you going to address those with the individuals, or are we just going to?
Well, so there's a couple things going on. I know I was working with the association, and they were going to give me a list of addresses to cross-check, because we have tons of files on Lake Drive in all 3 towns from like 1950. And so what I can tell you is we don't have a localized program where we oversee systems other than those that are pre-treatment, which is required by law. But when we do get a Title V inspection, which could trigger different ways of doing that, a sale, addition, phone call that sewage is running on someone's property, they're required to do a Title V inspection. Based on the outcome, they're required by law to upgrade the system. So if they're not in the pipeline, it's hard to say what is out there and how it's functioning, because we don't walk on people's property asking them to do a Title V without a reason why. But I will tell you, just the site conditions on a lot of these areas in Lake Drive, there's ledge issues, really tight soils, and people are spending 50, 60K on these pre-treatment systems, which better the lake quality, because the pre-treatment systems are like a mini wastewater treatment plant in the septic tank, which requires biannual inspections in perpetuity. You got to have a contractor over the life of the system, and they never fail, which is great. It's just they're very expensive, and I don't know exactly how many systems are there left that are really old. We would have to really do a deep dive into that. I will say it's been quite busy here with other issues, but yeah, it's a concern, and there's a lot of work that goes in with a sewer expansion, right? You got to do engineering, and and I was telling folks at the last meeting, you may have 95% of the people that are super interested in sewer, but once they see the cost or a ticket price, the position may change, and a lot goes into that. You got to get an engineer, you have to go out there and do a design, and the contracting costs, and it's definitely not cheap, but definitely worth it in the long run. With the quality of the lake, it's just there's a lot of work to do to explore those options.
And Mike, you were going to look and do some sampling for phosphates and nitrates.
Yeah, the information that we gather, the samples that we collect, all that data, Chris Main from GZA was going to put together a little synopsis for me, but I have not received that yet.
Yeah, I think one of the purposes of this committee was to look at how we can maintain the water quality of the lake. And I think that if we intuitively find that there is an improvement to be had by spending the money to extend the sewer, then maybe it's something that as a committee, we should be telling the town that it's a worthwhile endeavor. And So perhaps we could put that as a vote at one of the meetings.
Well, I'm wondering, you have a 5-year plan with the Water and Sewer Commission. Is that like a rolling 5-year plan?
I don't know the answer.
What we do is, for Finance Committee, we always do a 5-year projected. It's not like set in stone. I mean, I'm working on mine now. And you juggle stuff around. You kind of put a laundry list of stuff on there that kind of needs to get done with a somewhat of a price. We usually do those out of water and sewer surplus, so they're smaller ticket items. Sewer expansions, water expansions, they're usually multi-million-dollar projects, and they all go to town meeting, and the engineering starts after the town meeting passes we can kind of get an idea of what things are gonna cost, but when we start talking water and sewer expansion, it's over $1 million right out of the gate.
And it looks like, I don't know, I mean, just doing some simple math, it looks like maybe we have 16 units on Lake Drive that would be the ones on the extension, because we have 6 that are,
Yeah,
or is it 22 and then 6, the
Yeah,
septic is okay, but how many are already on the sewer? I know there's several.
there's 3 or 4.
In
Lake Drive.
Lake Drive, I think there's 6 full-time residents and 4 of them are already connected or something like that, I want
I
to
don't know,
say.
I think 4 or 3, 3 or 4, yeah.
Yeah, I got 3 on.
You got 3?
Yeah.
I mean, I think it makes sense, and certainly, especially after you get that summary from Chris Main,
Yeah,
I think it makes sense that we recommend this as a potential item for Water and Sewer Commission to look at. And in terms of adding that to some 5-year plan, that maybe this Water and Sewer Commission weighs in, and Select Board can weigh in and say, yes, we think this is something we should look at. But again, it's a long-term project, and it's
yeah.
a very expensive project, and it does require town approval. But yeah, I think certainly it makes sense that if
yeah,
we.
that kind of, and those extensions are, town meeting, go out for funding, and they would be on the whole tax rate for the entire town. It wouldn't be a user-based project. It's just too much money. And the sewer pump station is it's $750,000, so that's a big chunk that sewer is dealing with right now,
Right.
so.
This would be something that would have to be on a bond or something. And-
Yep.
Yeah.
And are we having I think some of the bonds are coming past due soon, aren't they?
Yeah, the water and sewer, or the sewer expansion project in 0304 is coming up. Within 3 years, I think will be paid off, and that's a big one.
Yeah.
That's gonna let up, and we'll probably roll into another project. Usually when one of them's paid off, that's $400,000 payment a year.
Right. Well, I think that, I think the water sewer from the August 10th meeting did discuss these very things. And they said, look, we just can't do this because the money isn't there.
Right.
And it's a great idea, but I think with this 5-year plan that we currently have, we have to put it in a line and discuss it at the next 5-year plan.
Right.
But with the help of the town and with the select board, I think we can probably keep this issue on the front burner.
Yeah, I think it needs to be certainly in everybody's view. And on the other hand, it has to be weighed against all the other priorities that we do have. And ultimately, it's going to be up to the voters whether or not they approve the funding.
Yeah, and we talked about it at the meeting. Once again, our plant is designed for 460,000 gallons a day, and with the rain we got from Ida, we're pumping over 1 million.
Right.
I did the flows this morning at 5:45 this morning, and we did 995,000 gallons.
Right.
So the wastewater, I&I, we have a state mandate to do an I&I study. We've done the study. It shows we have most of our flow, or almost half of our flow, coming into the treatment plant is groundwater and inflow from sump pumps and whatnot. So we've got a lot of work to do fixing what we have in the.
Which is another thing we have to think about is
Capacity, yeah.
if we're really experiencing this in an ongoing way, that, that weather is changing and that this is going to impact our system, then obviously the highest priority is we have to keep the system functioning.
Yeah. If this weather's the new norm, the state will make us they're gonna tell us we have to start doing some work to figure out where all this is coming from and repair it.
Right.
That's what this study was for.
So is this the first time in the history of hurricanes that we've exceeded the?
Oh, no.
No, we've gone through this every year.
It used to be a lot worse when we lined the sewer from Pine Street down behind Riggs, and it goes down behind Sargent Street, and it goes through the cemetery. We call it the cemetery easement. And we did Church Street. It helped us immensely. We would have been probably out of control down there if we hadn't had that done with this weather. When we used to get the big snow, and then in the spring we'd get a 2-inch rainstorm, and we had a massive snow melt, the plant would just get washed right out. It was just insane, the amount of water that would come in there. But lining the sewer is a really affordable and effective way to keep the I&I up. But we have all brand new sewer on Park Street, and once again, with this rain, we were down, Mark and Tony were down there all day yesterday pumping water. And the park wasn't even flooded this time. So it's
another
it's a big issue.
Yep.
And if, like I said, if this weather is gonna be our new normal, we've got a lot of work to do. We got a lot of work to do anyway.
Anyways, yeah.
I'd like to make a point about this, and then I'd like to ask Mike Buffoni a question. The point I'd like to make is that right now, the septic systems are if they fail, they're under local Board of Health tri-town control. Now, we supervise that. Looking at the alternative, let's say the town does not extend the sewer. And I'm not in a position to say whether that's a good idea or not, obviously, all by myself, but I'm looking at the alternative. The idea is, I would imagine that from what we've been seeing, there are people who are part-timers now who are choosing to become full-timers. This is partly related to this disease that we're talking about. There are other things too. And that we may see more full-timers on that and more of a burden, from use through the years. And what I think needs to be determined, at least before we lose control of this. If we put in a large community field, processing thing, like Kripalu or something like that, the local Board of Health no longer has jurisdiction over that. This is, I think it's DPH, isn't that right, Jim?
So anything over 10,000 gallons per day is permitted by DEP for a groundwater discharge permit.
It's DEP, not DPH.
DEP, yes.
Yeah, okay, so at any rate, we lose control. And so if, in the systems, when they fail, what we're really concerned about, the real failure point right now that we've traditionally had is that we see germs, E. coli, things like that going into the water. But as was brought up earlier, another issue that is going to potentially relate to our function on the Stockbridge Bowl Stewardship Commission in terms of preventing eutrophication is, do these fields, especially in the circumstances that Jim is talking about with the poor infrastructure conditions there, will they still allow for phosphate and nitrate runoff into the lake? In other words, will we get leaching of these into the water? This is something I think that needs to be verified will not happen before we lose control. That's what I think from that point of view. It needs to be there. Now, that's my point. Now, the question I have in terms of what you were just discussing, Mike, is if instead of having stormwater drainage just go down pipes, there are this, what do they call it? Gray water? Is that the name for it? Is there a way to process this storm water drainage? It's different, let's say, from septic, obviously, so that it goes into processing fields, like regular fields, and that really doesn't then burden our existing, sewage treatment plant. Are there ways for us to start to think about doing that?
Well, we don't have combined sewer flows, so we are strictly a sewer system. We're not taking any drainage in. The problem that we have.
Oh, good. I misunderstood what you were saying. I misunderstood what you were saying then.
Yeah, so we have just old pipes that are out in the ground. And those old clay tile pipes are 2 feet long. And when you think of the miles of pipe that's out there, And they used to just put concrete in there to grout them. And that concrete, usually when we do any digging up, the concrete's gone. It's non-existent. So, you know, there's so many pipe joints out there. And when the water table comes up, it just pours in. As far as doing my personal opinion for Lake Drive to do a
Combined field.
a big field, if you're gonna spend the money to get, everybody's gonna have to put a grinder pump in their yard anyway. It's all gonna be low pressure sewer. It's gonna be cheaper to run it up to the street to get rid of it, in the town sewer than it is to put it in a field, I would think. The field's gonna be a good expense, and then there's gonna be some kind of treatment processes involved and licensed operators and a NIPD's permit. It's gonna be far cheaper, I believe, to just run that to town sewer.
And not to mention the conditions. I mean, if there's ledge there, that's going to be a tricky situation trying to identify.
And the Tennessee gas pipeline, I mean, there's a lot of, they don't like people playing around their gas mains.
Yeah, Mike, I actually agree with you. Obviously, it's depending on the site conditions and, you know, you would have to calculate, it's per bedroom, by the way, and it's 110 gallons per day per bedroom. So we would have to get an inventory of the total number of bedrooms that, and hopefully be under 10,000 gallons per day. And if you're under 10,000 gallons per day, we would have local permitting control. But I would, if we were going to do, and you would have to have the land to do it, you know, you would have to have a pretty good sized field. You know, there could be some cost savings from like the fill amount and the field size if you did like a pre-treatment system, but it's still not cheap. It's still not going to be cheap.
Thank you. I think it's quite obvious to this committee that it's an interesting topic, and I think we have to continue dealing with the effects of the water quality because of the increased habitation around the lake. Okay, I don't think Gary's here. Gary?
Go back to the harvesting.
Yeah, all right, let's talk about the harvesting.
I already touched on the harvest.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'd like to just bring up a few things.
sure, go ahead.
I would like to recommend that you think twice about putting the big one in at this point. First, besides the fact that it's expensive to put in and whatever, but that's not the issue. The issue is, I think, we had a serious issue with the harvester. And as a driver, I'm not sure the big one, I'm not sure how familiar Chuck nor I are with the big green one, unless you have somebody else that you had in mind driving it. But before before you put it in, I think you should have a conversation with us and how comfortable we are, or you may spend the money.
Well, that's certainly the intent, but we're not at
Yeah.
that point yet. I mean, we still need to know if our GPS is alive and.
No, I understand that, but I'm just
But no,
saying.
there's already a planned meeting because Chuck is away.
Yeah.
Once Chuck is back, there will be a meeting.
Yeah, and before you put it in, you mean? Before you put the harvest?
make any
Decision.
final decisions.
Right, and I understand that you were investigating this, and I was wondering if you had any information on your theory or whatever.
Until Chuck gets back,
Uh-huh.
we really can't finalize any kind of investigation because it's going to be firsthand information from him that's going to drive a lot of that. But yeah, we've gathered information in terms of the fact that, yes, harvesters do capsize on occasion.
Right.
And actually, the company, Aquarius Systems, that manufacture that, they run a program where they monitor all news feeds for these kinds of incidents. And so when I contacted them, they knew all about it, had seen the pictures.
Right.
So we've gathered that kind of information in terms of what are all the possible causes. I've asked a couple of engineering hydraulic type of questions and gotten information back. All that'll go into a meeting once Chuck is back, and then we can put everything together and say, okay, what do we think really has happened here?
Right. I think that's very important.
Michael, did you run the big one before?
I've never really I've run the big one, but a long time ago.
Yeah, it's been a while since.
It's been a while. And I think the highway department gentleman ran it 2 years ago, and I ran the blue one.
Yeah.
And so That's, yeah, so it's a really, it's a different machine, the green one, from what I understand.
Absolutely.
You know, so anyway, I just wanted to point that out before the town made the decision to put it in until.
Rest
Yeah.
assured, yeah. We
Yeah.
plan on having a meeting, but Chuck happens to be in Nantucket.
No, I know. Okay.
Thank you. Any further discussion on the harvester? I think for some of us who recently discovered there was an incident with the harvester, and we're currently not being able to use it, and we're waiting for this to be fixed and Chuck to come back and tell us about when we can start it up.
Well, we're in
again.
the process right now. The insurance adjuster, the claims adjuster has been here. They've been in contact with Aquarius Systems.
Yeah.
So right now we're working on the insurance claim. And ultimately it'll probably all be repaired on the smaller harvester that did capsize. But we do own this second larger backup harvester. So that's the question at hand, is whether or not we deploy that, and at what point do we deploy that, and when will we have a working GPS unit. So those are the key elements. And Chuck Horer just happens to be on Nantucket right now, the operator. And so once he's back, we will have this meeting and discuss where we go from here.
Thank you. All right. Anything on the, well, we don't have anyone from the harbor master at Zebra Mussel? No?
Excuse me, can I just interrupt? I raised my hand. I think my name is Louis Corman. I had a question about the harvester. I live in Mackinac Terrace, and many of you may be familiar with my name because I try to attend these meetings. What I noticed was that this harvester does not capture the material that's cut. And what we noted, as many of you probably have noted, is a large amount of the cuttings coming up to the shore. Now, in the context of the eutrophication and the seeding, it would be useful to have a process where this material is actually removed from the lake, I think, because you're not adding the organic material back or the seeds. Is that anticipated as we begin to use this on a regular basis to have a mechanism for removing this material, because it's actually ideal compost, and there are a lot of lakes around the country that use it that process it as compost. And in the interest of removing nitrates and phosphates and organic material, that should be considered as part of the process of removing some of these invasive species. And I wonder whether the committee would consider that as part of an overall process of improving the quality of the lake and managing the nitrogen and phosphate. I understand it may not be very much, but there was a fair bit of material just in the dock area for Mackinac Terrace. Mr. Rubin may be able to comment on what he saw, because I believe he also lives on the lake. Thank you.
Well, one thing I can tell you, you seem to be under the impression that the harvester does not collect any of the aquatic material, and it does. And then it is offloaded over at the state boat ramp. So, and it is used for compost. So it is taken away and utilized for compost. Now, when it capsized, obviously we lost that amount of material that was on there. And that may be what you're experiencing in terms of a lot of it drifting up to shore. But this is a one-time deal. And then on a normal basis, let's say we're out there harvesting and nobody's capsized and there hasn't been any kind of an incident, you're still going to see some plant debris washing into shore, but that's not only from a weed harvester, that's also going to be from motorboats, from propellers going through vegetation. So there's more than one source of that kind of material that may show up on the shoreline.
My only suggestion is that that one consider a process of removing that material. I know that it's captured, but I had noticed that in the weeks during the period of time when the harvester was out, there was an increased amount of material floating in the area the periphery of the dock area. And it's just an observation. It's not in any way to imply that it's not capturing the material. It's just the relative amounts, and the idea of removing some of this material as part of the process of clearing the lake might be something to consider as we all try to improve the quality of the lake.
Well, I can tell you that the town, I mean, we have raked at the boat ramp area, and obviously we clean up the beach area as well. So on the town properties, that kind of collection of debris is cleaned up. And obviously, property owners can do the same thing on their own shorelines if they would like to. We can take this up in the select board, but this is a major undertaking to think that we can constantly go around the lake raking up the entire shoreline. So we'd have to discuss it. But again, I'm going to suggest that we just lost a significant amount of material into the lake when it capsized. So if you're seeing a lot more of that debris recently, it's probably due to the fact that we lost basically a load of cut material.
Thank you.
Bruce Robbins, you have your hand raised?
Ruben.
Ruben, sorry. You're muted.
Good morning.
Good morning.
In conjunction with what Dr. Corman just said, having been a town employee myself and having driven the green harvester for several years, I think I can comment on a couple of things that are of topic. The blue harvester, if it ever gets up and running again, I think is a satisfactory unit for the outlet area. I can only share that it loads very quickly because there is so much product in the lake. Some of the overflow that is seen is a result of the shuttle conveyor on that unit not being able to capture everything that it harvests. Conversely, the green machine is substantially larger, is more suited to the upper part of the lake. I tuned in late to the meeting. I heard there was some earlier conversation about putting the green harvester on the lake. Having driven it and making myself available to drive it again, I'm uncertain as to the apprehension of putting that down now. The lake is in terrible condition, and I, for one, would like to know, I heard Michael concerned about the expense of putting it on the water. I'm not sure what that expense is, but I'm looking for an answer as to why we don't put that unit on the lake now when it's most needed.
Okay, so you are available to drive the green harvester, if I'm hearing you
Absolutely.
correctly. Okay, wonderful. Can you contact the town administrator via email and let him know what your contact information is?
I'm happy to do that, but in conjunction with doing that, can we get that unit on the lake?
That decision remains to be made. I don't know, you probably missed some of that conversation. Basically, we have to have a meeting. We are required to have a working GPS tracking unit on the harvester. So we have to, number one, we're going through the process of looking at the insurance claim for the blue harvester, repairs on that. But also, we have not made a decision yet about putting the green harvester out. That is up in the air in terms of the GPS unit and whether or not NHESP will allow us to run the green harvester possibly without a GPS unit, or do we invest in a second GPS unit? So the decision hasn't been made yet, but I have a question for you in that if you've run the green harvester, is it able to get up the channel?
It's more ideally suited for the upper part of the lake because of some of the rocks that are in the lower part of the lake. While I have had it down there by Mike Nathan's house in the past, it's a little bit tricky to navigate. But again, I suggest the blue harvester is ideal for down there. It's not as bulky a machine. And there are places down there, frankly, where it could be offloaded. And in my opinion, it should live there.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Mike, do you have anything from the association dredging updates?
Not since, there's nothing new since the last update that we had. We haven't had any meetings or or anything. I just want to address something to Bruce. Bruce, good to see you. About the cost, I mean, that was really more of an issue of up to the town. It was really that machine has to be taken with it can't be brought down by the town. And so when I was speaking to Mike Canales, he was just bringing up that we'd have to bring it in with a bigger trailer or something that you have to rent from an independent company. I think it's from RW or something.
We would
Yeah.
probably just
So
have to hire
The expense was
RWs.
just more like what it is, I don't know, and whether it's worth it, I don't know. But I was just,
It's about $700.
oh, okay. So I take back, if it's of benefit, I'm all for it.
Right. Yeah, the cost in terms of that is not really significant.
In terms of both cost and efficiency and importance, especially in advance of the Josh, it would sure make a lot of sense to me to spend the $700, put the unit on the lake. I would be more than willing to help drive it. I would submit that you can take the GPS off the blue harvester until such time as it is corrected and repaired, and then simply attach it to the green harvester. It's a very simple 12-volt attachment. And beyond that, once the blue harvester gets attached, you can certainly get another GPS unit. I, for one, see absolutely no reason why that unit shouldn't be on the lake now.
Okay, well, just so you know, the GPS unit obviously was underwater. It was submerged. It was not able to be taken off, at the time. So it was submerged for several hours. So we've been drying it out and we're waiting to see if it's going to come back up. And then if we have to replace it, we will replace it.
Again, the GPS unit is not that expensive. And beyond that, you were referring to the ability for the permit to be applicable to the green harvester. I don't know, and perhaps someone could enlighten me if there's a differentiation between the permit's use of the blue harvester versus the green harvester.
No, the permit is not harvester specific. So,
That was my expectation.
yeah.
Thank you. There's no one here from the Conservation Commission to discuss any
I think Jamie,
updates.
unfortunately.
Jamie is absent. And Gary is not here to tell us about the harbor master. Are there any other businesses?
The only thing I'll add is, as far as testing goes, we'll be going back out this month. We did run up last week to do a Secchi disc reading. I talked to Mr. Cortman a little bit, and Chuck ran out. I couldn't go with him, and he ran out with his boat and did a Secchi disc reading in the middle of the lake. So June was, I want to say 21 feet with the Secchi disc and 19 feet in July. Last month was 13 feet and last week was 12 feet. So the water is definitely cloudy and turbid from the algae. And we're hoping, and now that I heard that Chuck is actually in Nantucket, hopefully get up there next week and do another Secchi disc. And I've been relaying the information to Mr. Cortman and Dr. Cortman and Chris Main, so they're aware. And that's all I have for that.
All right, thank you. Anyone else have any other business to discuss? All right, then I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Our next meeting is Friday, September the 17th. Have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Yep.
Second, all in favor? Thank you.
Hi.